Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Novelists Unwind. This is Johnnie Alexander. I'm so glad that you're watching this interview with Shawn Smucker. Really excited to have Shawn. I read the opening pages to two of his novels, and he is not just a fabulous writer, but I think more of a wordsmith even. I just love the artistry of his writing, so I'm really excited to talk to him about that. So Shawn, tell us a little bit, I guess, first about your debut novel, and then we'll, kind of move up and talk about your latest release. I understand your first two novels are for the young adult audience.
Yeah, the first novel that I wrote was The Day the Angels Fell, and that came out, that one's right here.
Yeah.
That came out about 2 years ago, and it was a book that I had written for my kids so I co-write and ghostwrite books for a living, and I had been working on a project in Turkey for a man who lived over there who was dying of cancer.
Oh, wow.
And it was a really powerful experience for me I spent 3 weeks with him. And when I came back, I wanted to write a book for my kids, and I was really thinking a lot just about my own mortality and about death. And so the real question I was struggling with was, could it be possible that death is a gift? And that question just kind of led to the novel. So that was the first one. And then the sequel to that was The Edge of Over There. And it follows most of the same characters, although a different character sort of becomes the protagonist. And it just kind of continues into that whole line of thought. Just questions about death, questions about life. Yeah.
And they both won the Christianity Today book award, which was just, fabulous. And that's so kudos on that, and other awards too. I read the opening pages of The Day the Angels Fell, not knowing it was a YA book, and actually was surprised to learn that it was written for a young adult audience. I wouldn't have guessed. Can you talk about that? It starts with this very old man. So
Yeah.
really, but again, the writing too just honestly blew me away. You
Well, thank
are
you.
a poet, I know, because you've written a book of poetry too, and you just, the poetry of your words is just fabulous.
Well, that's very kind of you, Johnny. Thank you. I think I don't see a huge difference in the books that I write anyway, as far as the audience goes. I think the main reason those are classified YA is simply because the protagonist does end up, for most of the book, he's talking about when he was 12, 13, 14 years old. So, I think that tends to be the thing that defines that. But I certainly would hope, and the feedback that I've gotten is that adults would enjoy that book. I don't, I wrote it for my kids, but I still, I didn't dumb it down. I wasn't thinking, I need to change this so that my 12-year-old enjoys it. It was just very much a story that I loved, and it happened to be about a kid. And so I guess that's the main difference.
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, I'm eager to get into the rest of it. I really do want to read it. Also, though, I wanted to ask you, did you have a say in the design of the book as far as the interior is concerned? Because I don't know if you could open up and show the first couple pages, because you have this, it's so striking. The artwork. Yeah.
Yeah, so that says The Storm.
And then the quote. And
Mm-hmm.
can you read the quote?
Yeah, the quote says, "Think of him still as the same, I say. He is not dead, he is just away." That's a poem, or from a poem by James Whitcomb Riley. I supplied the quotes and things, but the interior design was all Revell.
Wow.
They knocked it out of the park, I think, with that.
Yeah, they really did.
Yeah.
That just added to the whole thing.
Yeah.
Looks like that they're just kind of different, and then you have this quote, and it's like, oh wow, this is really setting.
Yeah, and each part is a different image. So that one was a tree, and then this one was a sword. so yeah, it was cool how they just took like different images like that for the parts. I really like that.
I really like that too. I thought that was really unique and something different. So you wrote those two books, and how long did it take you to write? How long is your I know, yes, that you also write for a living as far as
Hmm.
the biographies and the memoirs, but just with your fiction, how long has that journey been for you?
Yeah, the journey with the day the angels fell was really interesting because I took that trip to Turkey in 2013, wrote the book in 2013 and 14, and then self-published it at the end of 2014. And so I had initially done a Kickstarter campaign to raise money to, for the design and the and interior and stuff like that. Um, and so I had released it and had written the second book when I picked up an agent to help me with my co-writing work, and she saw these self-published novels that I had and thought and asked if I would mind if she tried to get a contract for them. And so she was able to. And so Ravel re-released The Day the Angels Fell in 2017, and then The Edge of Over There came out in 2018. So, but I mean, that's a long story to say that generally it takes me about maybe a year to 2 years of this, the actual writing and revising and rewriting and stuff like that. But a lot of times I'm thinking about the idea for a long, long time. So, I just handed in a novel to Rebel that will come out next summer, but I wrote the first draft of that novel back in like 2010,
Mm-hmm.
and revised it again in 2012, and have been thinking about it for 6 or 7 years, and finally had the opportunity now. And I totally rewrote it. It's very different from the original, but I think for me the writing time is not always that long. But for me it's more about just stewing on the story and thinking about it, sometimes for years, just kind of thinking, oh, that would be a fun thing to write. And then as it gets closer, I start to get more serious about it. And yeah.
That's really interesting though, because we often hear to be careful about self-publishing if you want to go to a traditional publisher, that can actually be not a good thing to do. So it's really fun to see that there are exceptions to those rules that
Right.
were given, and congratulations to you for that, because I think
Yeah,
you're
thanks.
probably a minority of people who've been able to
Hmm.
make that leap with a book, especially since it's the same book, the same story. So
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's cool too. So how long have you been writing memoirs and biographies? Has that been your career most of your adult life?
It's been about 10 years now. So I started in 2010 full-time co-writing and ghostwriting. The first book that I had helped to write, or that I wrote with someone else, was in, let's see, 2008, I guess it came out. And that was the book about Ann Byler, who is the founder of Auntie Anne Soft Pretzels. I helped her write her memoir.
Oh, wow.
And having that one book really just opened up a lot of opportunities. And so I wrote another book when I still had another business in 2009. And then when that business kind of fell apart, and my wife and I had to move back in with my parents, it's a really long story, but we had 4 kids at the time, and that business went under. We had a huge amount of debt, and we just decided at that point that we would give it 6 months, that I would try and find work, try and find other writing projects, other book projects, and we would give it 6 months. Well, that was 2010, and we're still going. You never know. These things it's like a roller coaster, but that's what got me into it. And so I've probably written about, I don't know, maybe 20 books or so for other people, 25 books over the last 10 years. And yeah, I really enjoy it. It's a lot of fun.
I bet it is, to hear other people's stories and to know that you're doing something so important to them. I read one of the, I guess, testimonials on your website from someone who so appreciated um, your kindness. I believe her husband was
Mm.
dying of cancer. And
Yeah, that was the project I was telling you about. And I think, sometimes co-writing and ghostwriting gets a bad name because it just because of the way the industry goes. But I feel like to have the opportunity to help someone tell their story when, writing isn't their strength, or maybe they don't have the time for it, it's really rewarding to help to walk someone through that process. And a lot of times, especially with memoirs, it becomes very therapeutic, for someone to sit down with you and just talk through their whole life. I mean, a lot of times people are telling me stuff that they've never told anyone else before,
Wow.
and it can be a really powerful experience.
That's such a gift too. I mean, there must be something about you that's able to draw those things out of people, but then to have that trust level where they're saying, here's my story,
Yeah.
and be careful with it. But
Mm,
it's like, it's just like such a treasure, I would think, to be given that.
yeah. Yeah.
It's really cool. Well, do you want to talk a little bit about your nonfiction book, Once We Were Strangers, because that seems like a really interesting story to.
Yeah, that was a really fun project, and it changed me a lot because I went into it really wanting to just help someone. It was 2015, 16, and the civil war was raging in Syria, and I was seeing, all the images on the news from Aleppo, and I knew we have a lot of refugees here in the city, and so I approached one of the organizations to see if there was anyone I could write about, and they connected me with this guy Mohammed, a little bit older than me, 4 sons, married. He had just come to the U.S. 4 or 5 months before I met him, and I remember when I first sat down with him, I explained, I asked him, "What do you think about writing a book? Is this something you'd be interested in doing?" We talked a little bit about it, and then I said, "Well, I just want to make sure you understand, like, we could spend a lot of time together writing this book, and it might never get published." I didn't have a contract at that point. I said, "We could spend a lot of time together and nothing might come of this." And through the translator, he said, "Oh, that's impossible. Something has already come of this. We're friends now." And that had such a huge impact on me because he didn't know me. I'm a Western US Christian. He's a Middle Eastern Muslim, Syrian. It would have been it would have made sense for him to be afraid of me or to not like me. But his openness and his willingness to befriend me just so easily was really eye-opening. And then as our relationship developed, I realized, he doesn't really need help from me. What he really needs is friendship. And that was a big step, because it's easy to give somebody $20 or to pay their utility bill or to, give them a ride to work, that kind of stuff. Like, it's easy to just do and then go back to your normal life. But people who need friends, like, that's a big investment. And I realized kind of just how selfish my own life is and how inward focused it is on my own family, my own problems, and spending time with Muhammad really opened up my eyes to that.
Oh, that's fabulous. That's fabulous. And then your latest novel. So we're jumping back and forth. Fiction,
Yeah.
nonfiction, fiction, nonfiction. Your latest novel is Light from Distant Stars. So
Yeah.
talk about that
So it's that
one.
one. Yeah.
Beautiful.
And I love this cover. I was so happy with that when they sent it to me at first. But so that's geared more towards adults.
Mhm.
It opens up with the scene of the protagonist Cohen finding his father on the floor in the funeral home where they work together, and he thinks his father is dead, and he feels a lot of guilt. And in the beginning, there's sort of this, there's a little bit of an unreliable narrator, in that you're not really sure what his role was, and I don't think he really knows what his role was, which sounds kind of weird, but I guess you understand as you start to read it. And then the book, just from there, it goes into the week that he spends thinking back on some very pivotal moments in his childhood and the relationship that he had with his father. And what I was really trying to explore is this idea that, as we get older, we grow apart from our parents, and it's natural and healthy to do that. Now, a lot of times the circumstances that lead to that are not necessarily healthy, but I think it is healthy for kids to, have their own lives and to become independent. And I feel that with my own parents, when I went to college and then got married, like, we kind of lost touch. I mean, we still kept in touch, but things change. But what I really wanted to explore was the idea of how do parents and children rediscover each other as they get older, and especially when the separation was very traumatic, and when the thing that caused them to part ways, or to part ways emotionally or geographically, was kind of an ugly incident. And so it's really a story of a man who's a middle-aged man who's trying to remember his relationship with his father, and also there are some strange things that happened when he was a boy, and thinking back through those as well.
I think you're so right about that too. I mean, I know you have what, 6 children, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're about 16 and under. So
Mm-hmm.
my oldest is in her 30s now, so we're kind of in different places. And you're so right about that whole relationship between parents and child, because I can remember when I started thinking of my mom she's always my mom, but those relationships are changing, and now it's kind of like that way with my daughters. It's coming from the other direction.
Right. Yeah.
So it's really interesting. But also in this story, again, the writing is just absolutely phenomenal. You're just so into this man as he's kind of tiptoeing around this scene, and like not trying to get blood on his shoes, and then it does, and not really knowing, and it's like, why isn't he just calling the police? I mean, but there's this very I don't even know how to describe it really, is how it's affected me, but there was just such a slowness to it, which isn't to say that I wasn't, engaged in reading. And it's like each little second counted for something. How do you do that? I mean, how do you do that? Do you understand what I'm saying? It's just
yeah. No, I know what you're saying, and I think it's a dangerous place to be as a writer, because it's a very fine line, right, between drawing your reader in with a really slow pace, and then becoming boring or losing their interest. So I definitely feel like I was right up against that line for those first couple of chapters, but I enjoyed it. I felt like it was such a crucial beginning, and that scene was so important, and I really wanted to even though it's third person, I really wanted to somehow show the reader Cohen's state of mind, and even the slowness of the scene sort of echoes his uncertainty and his his sort of slow processing. And so thanks, that's very kind of you. I struggle, like that, like it wasn't easy for me to do that, and I even had second thoughts about it as the revision process went on. So I'm glad that it worked for you.
Yeah, it really did. I mean, it was interesting to me because it's almost like we're so used to reading in deep point of view, and it's not really that, and yet it's present tense, which sort of just going. But I don't know, just some of the words you use, the way you were describing how his body was moving, and it's just like I could just see it, and it's and again, it's so poetic, so it's like that really kind of touched my heart too. So
thank you. Yeah, thanks. I think the other thing I did want to say about the book is that for me it was an exploration of memory, and an exploration of how reliable is our memory, because the other thing with co-writing is a lot of times I'll be helping someone write their memoir, so an older person maybe in their 80s or 90s even, and they're telling me a story, and then their son or daughter who's in their 60s will say, no, that's not how it happened. And they have, totally different viewpoints, like one of them is not right. It's not like, it's not possible that they're both remembering this correctly. And so that's always been really interesting to me, because you think about how much your memories of your parents inform your current relationship with them. But what if your memories aren't right? Like, what if there are key memories that you have that have formed the way you think of your parents, and they're wrong? And so that was something that I was really interested in exploring with Cohen, was, because he does, without giving away spoilers, there is a memory that he has omitted, that he comes to remember, and that changes everything for him. The way he remembers his dad, the way he remembers everything that happened, and so that's always been really fascinating to me.
I think that's really interesting too, and I like reading books where sometimes there's these shifts in time, and so that something will happen, and then you'll see that same event either later or earlier or from another character's perspective,
Mm-hmm.
and you realize that what you thought was right wasn't necessarily right. And of course, we see that in
Right.
TV shows now too. Like I think Lost, was one of the first ones that really you thought
Right. Yeah.
happening and you didn't because until they showed the backstory.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's really cool. I wrote down like I don't know, I've got like 3 different quotes here, and I know we don't have time to go over every single one of them, but um, let's go with this one. This one I think I took off your blog. You said everyone's looking for a place in the world,
Mm.
and I just wondered if you want to just talk about a little bit more about that one.
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, so place is really important to me. And I think, like I told you earlier, growing up here in Lancaster and knowing that, the last 13 generations of my family lived in this area within 15 miles of where I live, has a big impact on me. It has a big impact on my kids. It shapes the way that I think about the world. I grew up feeling very accepted and very much a part of things because of that. Like I just felt so comfortable in this place, and so I think that place, and because of that, then the setting in my books is really important, and it's something that I think a lot about, and I work hard to try and create a real strong sense of place
Mhm.
because of that. But that all comes out of my experience as a kid of my dad was, for 1 year, we didn't live here when I was like 4 or 5 years old. So we sort of moved back to Lancaster just as my memory was starting to kick in. Like I don't have a lot of memories from when I was 2, 3, 4, but when I started kindergarten, first grade, like that's, I feel, for me, when I can really remember things. And so for me, the very beginning of my memory is coming into this place that felt so much like home. Like, everywhere I turned, I had a cousin. I have 30 or 40 cousins.
Yeah.
I show up at school, I show up at high school, and I've got older cousins who are helping me figure out where to go to class. And I just never, I so rarely as a kid felt out of place or um, felt alone. I just never felt that. So it was a really beautiful place to grow up. And because of that, I think that whole idea of place just has had a really big impact on me.
No, I really like that. And we're talking about Lancaster, Pennsylvania. That's where
Yeah.
Sean
Mhm.
is from, where his family has been from for generations.
Yeah.
I love that sense of rootedness too. I just think that's really cool, and a strong sense of place too.
Mm.
I try to do that in my stories also because I
Mm.
just feel like it's very important to root the read. I mean, yeah, to root the reader in that, to give them that idea of this is a real place even when it's not. So
Yeah.
that's
Right. Right.
cool. Yeah. Well, let's show your books again one more time
Okay.
before we close out. So,
So that's The Day the Angels Fell. That's the first of the YA books. And then The Edge of Over There.
and they're a series, and what's the
Yeah. They're a series. There is still a third book that I'll be writing, but right now these are the only two that are out.
in that series?
And then Light from Distant Stars is the most recent.
And is it out already? Or is it
Yes. Yep.
or it's
Yep.
out?
Hmm.
Okay,
It's
it's out.
it's yeah,
Great.
it's out.
You can get those on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, wherever you like to buy your books.
Yeah.
So, Sean's books. The very last question I ask all my guests is, when you're done writing, what do you do to unwind when you finish that story?
Oh, good question. I love to read. I mean, that's like, I feel like I'm so lucky, blessed, fortunate, because the thing that I love to do the most is write, and I get to do that all day. And I mean, I have to pinch myself every day because it seems totally like a dream. But so I feel like in some ways I don't feel like a huge need to unwind, but I do. I love to read. We love to watch movies. So our family, they're huge into movies, and we're just a story family, you know, like we just love good stories.
That's great. Well, and I'd encourage everybody to go to Shawn's blog. It's Shawn Smucker, ShawnSmucker.com. There's a lovely picture on a recent post. It might even be, it's very recent. Your son and your daughter. And she's
Okay. Yeah.
fixing his tie for the prom.
Yeah.
That it's
Yeah.
hard to have kids her best friend. And
Yeah.
it is such a cute and I don't know, just a beautiful picture. I mean, he's just smiling, and you just see the back of her head.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just so cool. So yeah, visit Shawn's blog.
Yeah. Come on over. Come on over. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun, and thanks to everybody who's watching. Really appreciate you, and we'll see you next time on Novelists Unwind. Bye bye.